Don't y'all just hate it whenever like a fantastic game gets released and then you think, wow, I cannot wait for a sequel to this great game to come out. And then there's just radio silence and you're waiting for this sequel, and then, you know, you see all these other kind of mediocre games and they get tons of sequels, and then you're like, wait, where's the sequel to this like long lost forgotten classic? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about here. I've decided to invite over 12 of my best YouTube friends to talk about the games that they love that just never got sequels. And we're going to start with the girls. So Taylor, take it away.
What's up everyone, Taylor here from the Gaming Shelf, and thanks David for having me on to talk about a JRPG that desperately needs a sequel, and girl, do I have one for you, Tokyo Xanadu. Now, we all love Ys and the Trails games, but way too many people have slept on Falcom's hidden gem, Tokyo Xanadu. It's basically Persona, but with Ys combat. It has a fun, addictive game loop, great action combat, some fun, if not a little tropey cast of characters, and some super groovin' music. Now, why does it need a sequel? Well, for one, they baited us with one at the end of the game. We promised to see you in other Xanadu. Well, we're still waiting for that promise to be fulfilled, Falcom. And I guess for me, I just love the Persona formula and I can't get enough of it. There have been other games that have done it, but to me, Falcom has done the best job outside of Persona trying to do that same formula. You know, going to school, having fun with your friends, then going to another dimension to crawl through dungeons. I just can't get enough of it. And with everything that Falcom has learned since that game, I feel like a sequel could be even better. Stronger cast of characters, a better story, even better dungeons and combat, not to mention maybe some deeper social elements. Now, it's been 8 years since it was originally released in Japan, and it's well past time for a sequel. Now, after Ys 10, maybe give us a little Xanadu love, Falcom, please?
I've got to admit, Taylor, I've played a lot of Falcom games in my time, but I've never actually played Tokyo Xanadu. Maybe I really need to get on that. But speaking of some Falcom games and Falcom lovers, let's hear from the Kaseki Nut.
Hi guys, TKN here, and thank you to David for letting me take part in another spanking collab. Now, in terms of choosing a game that is worthy of a sequel, that's tough because many of the games that are memorable to me have already got this treatment. But I'm gonna go with Nayata no Kaseki, or as it's known in English, The Legend of Nayata Boundless Trails. Now, I know what you might be saying, trails? Hold on, there's a load of those. Well, here's the thing, despite having trails in the name and a few connections, it's currently considered non-canon to the main series. In other words, it's a standalone title. And outside of some select similarities like the surname of the main protagonist and the use of mirror as a currency, it's very easy to see it as a separate title. While the other Trails games are near on all turn-based, Nayata is a fully fledged action RPG that shares more in common with the likes of Spy and Ys. It has platforming, physical and magic attacks, tight controls, and excellent boss battles. The music is also very strong, as expected of Sound Team JDK, ensuring that the journey across Remnant Island and its surrounding lands is a memorable one. Now, though it isn't canon, I fully expect that one day this might be drawn into the main series in some way. I'm just hopeful based on the theories going around, and if it were to happen, a sequel would be absolutely perfect to link it in. Not only expanding on the already solid gameplay, but also reviving one of the better looking titles from the PSP era.
Kaseki Nut is a man after my own heart. I am a huge Falcom fan as well, and I loved Nayuta Endless Trails, so much so that I even Let's Played it on my channels years ago when the PSP version was first translated, and I loved it. And I am totally looking forward to this fall whenever the remastered version of the game comes out. And speaking of some kind of Japan-only hidden gem games, let's hear from Blitz.
What's up guys, my name is Blitz on YouTube, and again thank you David for having me on for this video because I am excited to be talking to you guys about Dragon Ball Z Super Saiyan Densetsu, or Dragon Ball Z Super Saiyan Legend in English. This was a Super Nintendo turn-based Dragon Ball Z RPG card game, it's a lot of words, that unfortunately never got a sequel. And also, it was exclusive to Japan. It never made its way to the US. But in the emulation scene, it was one of the top downloads early on, making its way onto me and my older cousins' radars. We played the whole thing in Japanese before realizing fans made an English translation, which we immediately downloaded and played after already beating it in Japanese. This game is pretty interesting in the sense that it technically is a remake, combining two earlier Dragon Ball games from the NES system into one. It starts off in the Saiyan Saga and unfortunately ends after defeating Frieza, and you take turns controlling Goku, Piccolo, and Gohan when walking around outside in the world, but in battles, you pretty much controlled everybody. And there were a lot of unique mechanics. I'm not going to go into full detail on everything, but I do want to talk about my favorite things. At its base, it had levels, a stat system like most RPGs do, and you gain experience points in each battle to level up. But what was really cool to see was this game allowed you to deviate from things that happened in the original story. Like if you complete Goku's training with King Kai super fast, he can arrive back on Earth before Vegeta and Nappa get there. You could also train Chatsu, Yamcha, and Tien to be strong enough and survive the battle with Vegeta and Nappa, and they come along to Namek with Gohan, Krillin, and Bulma. My absolute favorite mechanic in the game though is the Zenkai boost. In the story of Dragon Ball, the Saiyan characters Goku, Gohan, and Vegeta can get a power boost if they are beaten within an inch of their life and then they heal. In this game, if you let Gohan, Goku, or Vegeta drop under 5 health points, then you use a Kami card item to fully heal them, they instantly level up, regardless of how far away their experience points are. And it's a stronger level up than a typical experience point level up. So you can get the Saiyan characters super strong with this. When Vegeta finally joins your team, he can actually be very annoying, which I love that it embodies his personality. Vegeta is a gamble and a wild card character where randomly after you select an attack for him to do and use a card on him, he straight up can say, no, I don't want to, skipping his turn and wasting your card entirely. Or he can jump ahead of other characters' turns and attacks whenever he wants to. Such an asshole, I love him. But what's great about Vegeta is that when you're a higher level than certain enemies, they will often try to run away from battle. Vegeta chases them down for an instant kill, securing the experience points for the team. Again, very attentive to detail on personality. There's also a really cool and super difficult secret boss if you let all the characters survive the Frieza battle at the end of the game. I will not be spoiling what that boss fight is. I really want you guys to try it out and let me know. I can absolutely go on and on about this game, and I probably already have, so I apologize for that, David. But I honestly cannot recommend this game enough for you guys. Please try it out for yourselves. I hope one day fans can make a sequel of it with mods. I would pay top dollar for that.
Thanks, Blitz. That really kind of took us all back in time to the SNES Classic era. But let's go back even further to the NES era, to my childhood, and let's hear from Zyger Gaming.
Hey guys, Zyger here, and I wanted to contribute to this video by telling you all that the RPG that I loved so much but didn't have a sequel ever is Crystallis on the NES, so we're taking it way back. This was a game I played the heck out of, had a lot of adventurous spirit in it, a lot of cool items to find, and it was so open-ended. But that game never had a sequel. And actually one was planned at one point, one was in the process of being developed for the Neo Geo, but it never came out. And this was a huge disappointment. So there's a real black hole in the Crystallis legacy because it never had a sequel. That's the one I would pick and remake. Today there could be a lot of options for making a sequel in HD 2D. The style is kind of coming back to some extent, and it'd be possible. So that's my contribution.
Thank you, Zyger. I could not agree more. I loved Crystallis, and I had no idea that they were going to make a sequel to it, and just nothing became of it. That's so upsetting to me. But now let's hear from everybody's favorite, Brita Food for Dogs, with some portable gaming.
Hi, I'm Food for Dogs. I fell in love with games like Disgaea and Hyperdimension Neptunia because of their irreverent, silly humour. I love silly. Laughter is, after all, the best medicine. That's why I want a sequel to the silliest game I've played, the marvellous Magical Star Sign for the Nintendo DS. It may be silly, but in this game you do not just save the whole world, you save the whole solar system. You start out at Will-O-Wisp Magical Academy with a bunch of magical students. Oh no, it's not Harry Potter. Magical Star Sign has many flaws. They were concurrently working on Mother 3, but it has that potential for a madcap magical adventure. That's why I want a sequel. It needs a complete overhaul of graphics and interface, no more 100% stylus. And the combat needs more depth and finesse and less random battles. But The core concept is great. A truly fantastically silly game made over for our times. That's what I would like, who is still a child at heart. Thank you.
Doesn't she just make you smile? She makes me smile from ear to ear. She could be sitting there reading the phone book, and I would just be enthralled. I love her so much. And also, I don't know if you're aware, Britta, but Magical Star Sign is actually a sequel to a Japan-only Game Boy Advance game called Magical Vacation, which has indeed gotten a translation patch. So that's pretty cool, and you might want to look that one up if you really like Magical Star Sign. And now let's hear from some people who want to talk about games that they loved, but I didn't really like them all that much. Maybe a sequel can make them better.
Hey everybody, it's Super Derek. When David asked me about what game really needs and deserves a sequel, there was one game that came to mind. There are several that obviously deserve sequels, but the one that first jumped into my mind was Rogue Galaxy. And this is kind of a 2-for-1 because Rogue Galaxy actually started off its life a little bit as a follow-up. It was going to be a Dark Cloud 3. It was going to be a sequel to the Dark Cloud series, which I also think deserves a sequel in and of itself. But obviously they changed a lot of it up, and by the time the game eventually came out, they decided that they were going to break from Dark Cloud and do something a little bit different. So what they did was
Pirates in Space.
And the game, while it had kind of a story that was let's just say it was not a very mature or thought-provoking and thoughtful game, it was still a very fun, very shonen, a very youthful sort of storytelling. And that's something that I think that we just don't get very often in RPGs these days. A lot of it just seems so heavy and deep and complex and interconnected. And while I love those things, sometimes just the sort of stupid turn your brain off and go on a crazy adventure on the bow of a spaceship through the vacuum of space just sounds a little bit more, you know, a good way to unwind after a really long RPG or something that's just really heavy. So Dark Cloud, yeah, that was great. It deserves a sequel, but Rogue Galaxy is one of those games that just had so much potential to go on and do bigger and better things, and I feel like it left on kind of a bit of a cliffhanger, and I really want to see where Jaster and the rest of the crew go from there, because man, what a crew indeed. Kind of gives me a little bit of Cowboy Bebop vibes, a little bit of Outlaw Star vibes. It's kind of a wild ride, and it was so much fun to play through. I wish I could return to the world that they made. Level 5, get on it.
Thank you so much, Derek. I'm glad that somebody out there liked Rogue Galaxy. I thought that it was really unbalanced myself, but, you know, a sequel can take all those problems and kind of fix them up and make it good. It did have all the bones of a great game, it just didn't register for me. And the same thing can probably be said for Vagrant Story. So let's hear from Alex on that front.
What's up everyone? Alex here. I know the events of the original game wrapped it up fairly well, but whenever I think about a game that didn't get a sequel that I wish it did, it would easily be Vagrant Story. I absolutely love this game. That first hour, with those beautifully rendered cutscenes that were just simply way ahead of its time, set the mood for what is, essentially, a dungeon crawler that I saw as an extension of Squaresoft's constant experimentations with bringing the depth of turn-based combat into real-time action. So naturally, if they pursued a sequel to that, I see them ironing out the balance by streamlining certain elements and fine-tuning the risk system so that it's not terribly punishing. I also see the sequel as an opportunity to expand upon the level design, which wasn't bad in the original, by any means. But can you imagine even more epic set pieces mixed with some fun puzzles and newer challenges? Furthermore, I see a really good framework in Vagrant Story to tell stories through its gameplay, much like many modern games these days. But most of all, it has to feature Ashley Riot and other members of the VKP in an all-new, brand-new adventure. Vagrant Story is a game that I really don't mind seeing again, even in a remastered form. And if a sequel did come out, you bet that I'll be there to play it.
Thank you so much, Alex. I, for one, would not mind returning to Ivalice and seeing what more they could do with Vagrant Story. And now, let's hear from Lady Pelvic about a game that really does not need any introduction, nor does it need an introduction about how I feel about it.
So I've kind of grown out of the every game needs a sequel phase. I think you can have one game with great characters and a small enough story to be told in a single game, and move on rather than trying to milk things. That's not to say if there's more story, don't tell it. I'm just not about that cash grab life. I hate when things stretch out and become needlessly complex. But if I had to choose a game to have a sequel, it would only be so because it came out second. But in service of the story, it'd be a prequel. The Legend of Dragoon is an incredible game, a lovely cast, fun journey, and okay game mechanics that I wasn't too great at, but the story speaks of a war that took place 10,000 years ago. Humans were enslaved by a race known as Winglies. Humans befriended dragons, gaining the power of dragoons to win their freedom. And without saying too much, there are characters relevant to our cast that have connections to the war, and I, for one, want that expanded upon. I would love to see how things come full circle, and I appreciate that The Legend of Dragoon was rather vague about the war, leaving a lot of creative room for a prequel.
Thank you so much, Lady Pelvic. That's really fascinating about that prequel, and kind of funny story because our next guest, Tark's Gauntlet, also wanted to do Legend of Dragoon, and then I was like, you know what, it's up to you two. You guys kind of fight it out and see who gets Legend of Dragoon. And then I said, you know what, it might be fine because, you know, she could talk about the prequel and you can talk about the sequel. And then Tarks was like, no, I want to talk about the prequel too. So so they really did have to duke it out, but in the end, Tarks went with actually one of my favorites, Eternal Sonata.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tark's Gauntlet here. Now, of course, for those of you who know me, my #1 choice for this would be a prequel for Legend of Dragoon. But I don't really want Lady Pelvic to cut me, so I'm gonna go with Eternal Sonata today. This is a game I had a hard time getting along with the first time I played it, but over time I came to love it for its unique narrative slant, its interesting turn-based combat where standing in light or shadow will affect your attacks, and its endlessly colorful and endearing world. If you played the first game, you'll understand there's not much room for a direct sequel, as the game itself takes place in a more or less fictional world in the head of famous classical pianist Chopin, as in the real world he lies on his deathbed. But that doesn't mean we can't replicate this sort of narrative format and theming with other composers. I, for one, would love to see a second attempt made using composer Petrovic Mussorgsky. Mussorgsky wasn't exactly a celebrated composer in his time, moving in and out of work like waves in a tide, moving from one friend's house to another, and never marrying. Many critics thought ill of him, and as time would go on, he would develop issues with substance abuse. Some of his most famous works were never performed in his lifetime and were viewed as too avant-garde or extreme for the public. Mussorgsky died young, penniless, destructive, and misunderstood. Many people posit today that after his death, the grave he was buried in was moved, but his tomb remains beneath a city bus stop. This history lesson is all to say that his life would transpose greatly to the format of Eternal Sonata. The world of make-believe the game employs could incorporate his avant-garde style of music as dungeon designs. The towns and locations could be as beautiful and colorful as they were in the first game, in contrast to the slums he spent most of his life in. In addition to giving the world of make-believe its own quest to fulfill, the game could contain a narrative subtext about poverty, exclusion, and substance abuse. The first game done an amazing job disguising some darker subject matter behind its childlike veneer, and I can think of no composer more fitting to carry on this legacy than Modest Mussorgsky. Perhaps as an individual he's not viewed in a positive enough light for a studio to take this kind of risk, and maybe Eternal Sonata is best left as a one-off experiment. But if it were to make a comeback, I would love for them to take a look at a more troubled character like Petrovic Mussorgsky.
Wow, the teacher has become the student. I've never heard of Petrovic Mussorgsky, and I had to go and Google him and be like, what's this guy all about? So that was actually really fascinating, and I would love to see more games kind of like take on real life historical figures. I think that'd be really freaking cool. And now let's hear from our first time father, Ren, over at Hallowed Be Thy Game.
Hello everyone, Ren from Hallowed Be Thy Game, and in an era when games that should die in utter obscurity are continuing on in sequel heaven, there are some games out there that are patiently waiting for their glorious return to the limelight. And back in August of 2019, a nigh-perfect union was conceived between Nintendo and Platinum with Astral Chain. Let me paint the picture here for you. Take an 80s cop anime, throw in a cyberpunk game that I would actually play, and distill an absurd amount of adrenaline down into one of the most unique and slamming action combat systems to ever grace the Switch, and you get Astral Chain. I can feel my eyes dilate as I surge through the streets of cyberpunk anime. While this game injects an unhealthy amount of hype through my eye holes, I can just feel ripples form on my smooth monkey brain. God dang, my man, it ain't fair. It should be illegal to create such a goated, god-tier game that allows me to make my own anime waifus and husbandos and save the future. I mean, you give me this and then you tell me I can't have another one? Nintendo, don't play me like that. It ain't like this game didn't make money. Look, I would have said at one time this was just an ultra hidden gem, but this sucker printed cash. Nintendo, do you not like money? Now Platinum, come on. Come on back. You've tasted the grass on the other side of the river and it tastes like Babylon's Fall. It's time to come home and give Ren what he needs, Astral Chain 2. David, I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and just get a little bit crazy about Astral Chain, and I wish you all the best, and I'll see you next time.
I'll be the first to admit, I've never played Astral Chain, but after looking at that footage and hearing you talk about it, like, I'm all about it. I've really got to go and try that out. But from a game that nobody's really ever played, or at least I haven't played, let's talk about a game that just about everybody here, I'm sure, has played. Let's go, Miss Bubbles.
Hello, it's Miss Bubbles. The JRPG that I believe deserves a sequel is Fire Emblem Three Houses. I believe Fire Emblem Warriors Three Hopes was a spin-off set in an alternate timeline, but I'd like to have one that follows similar gameplay mechanics to Fire Emblem Three Houses. As a JRPG beginner and someone who usually stays away from tactical RPGs, what called out to me in Fire Emblem Three Houses was the slice of life elements, and to see them taken away in Fire Emblem Engage was a little bit heartbreaking, I'm not gonna lie. Now, I'm not going to be too picky with the sequel. I don't even necessarily want Byleth to be in the game or for it to be in a different timeline. We can just have a completely new protagonist as well as a new story in general. I just really miss these slice of life elements and being able to have a meal with my ally or to train them or maybe even go fishing or plant some crops. But let's add a bit of a twist where we give players the opportunity to explore the world a little bit more and maybe let them choose if they want to have a strict schedule or not, kind of like Atelier Mary Remake, where the unlimited mode lets you explore the world at your own pace. Now, I really enjoyed the tactical aspect of Fire Emblem Three Houses, but while enabling and disabling permadeath is awesome for people with FOMO like myself, maybe we can have one more difficulty level, which is easy. Not normal, let's have easy. The number of people that I know really want to try out Fire Emblem Three Houses but don't because of how much they've heard these battles get complex and difficult, it's crazy. Like, I wish they can just go ahead and try it out, and maybe having an easier difficulty level would be more approachable for them. And I must admit, I stopped my playthrough about 3/4 of the way in because combat just got so complex. Again, I'm a new fan of JRPGs and getting into one is really difficult for me and other people, but I feel like we should be given a better chance to discover such amazing games. So yeah, a sequel to Fire Emblem Three Houses with a bit more accessibility options would be perfect in my opinion. Thank you, David, for sharing this platform with me, and I hope to see you on my channel.
Well, we all know that Fire Emblem has like a million sequels. I mean, it's been around since the NES era, for God's sakes. But a sequel to just Fire Emblem Three Houses? Maybe like a Fire Emblem meets Persona sort of school thing? I think a lot of people could really get behind something like that, and it could be pretty interesting and a new way for Fire Emblem to go, like a new spin-off for Fire Emblem to go. That might be pretty cool. And now let's hear about a game that really needs a sequel from everybody's favorite game show host, Simon the Miyazaki Man.
Hey everyone, it's the Miyazaki Man Sai here. Thanks David for inviting me for this collaboration. I've collected more tasty prizes for you when you inevitably smash everyone in the next Figuring It Out game show. So what game do I wish had a sequel that never came out, with a gun to my head and the Persona 5 made in my bed? I'm going with Skies of Arcadia. For those of you that don't know, Skies of Arcadia was originally released on the Dreamcast on October 5th, 2000. It tells the story of a young sky pirate named Vice on his airship with his plucky young crew. Look at that ship soar into the sky. And what makes this game so memorable and heartwarming is the interaction between the three main characters, the Sky Pirate of Vice, cocky, brash, arrogant and confident Aika the tomboy, we just saw her lose the map, and Fina, oh our ancient beautiful moon princess Fina. To my mind, the concept of exploring the skies, exploring space had never been done before, and look at these creative locations, these creative worlds you can explore with your skyship. Spoilers, not spoilers, you can traverse higher and lower than you could ever imagine throughout the duration of the story. Look at the various ships, the various colourful characters, all the themes akin to One Piece, the different pirate lords and commanders, look at them gather, and the one-to-one ship duels were absolutely immense. You can equip your ship with different firing mechanisms that can fire in delayed turns, big bang, multiple fire salvo, blowing up the enemy ship. It was epic. So why does this game deserve a sequel beyond all other games? For its time, it was innovative, it was creative, it was colourful, full of witty banter, humour, the music was absolutely awesome. It borrowed from Gendo Suikoden the ability to make your own castle, base, your pirate base, recruiting shipmates and crew, the ability to upgrade your ship, use your ship in 1v1 duels. You could explore lands, seas, oceans, and Vice, come back, return, not just in Valkyria Chronicles, but in Skies of Arcadia too. Please make a sequel. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Simon, for coming on and talking about Skies of Arcadia. I could not agree more. I think that the closest that we've ever really gotten is a spiritual successor called Nostalgia for the Nintendo DS. However, there's another spiritual successor in development right now for Skies of Arcadia, so hopefully Sega does see the demand for this and they get their act together and they just go ahead and create a true sequel. I would love that. And thank everybody out there so much for coming and watching, and all of my friends for agreeing to come and join just to talk about their favorite games and what games they want a sequel to. Please be sure to follow all their channels and subscribe to them as well. They put out some great content. Thank you guys so much and have a good day.